Hey, everybody. Welcome to our on-demand webinar, pre-recorded. And we're going to talk about dark mode in email and a couple of other really cool ways that you can invest in your email program right now. So joining me today, I have a few key people who have put together some great thinking about dark mode and a few other topics. First of all, we have Michael Shiano. He's a senior product manager with Adobe Campaign, where he's been working for over 5 years on the Adobe Campaign product and with the Adobe Campaign customer base. He really focuses on the people, the process, and the product there, and has created a framework for really the customer journey and getting the most value out of that for his customers. Cool fact is Michael lives in southern Indiana on a 150-year-old farmstead where he is quarantined now. He has a strawberry patch and raises cattle and goats and chicken. So I think he wins the coolest quarantine award. Welcome, Michael. And
Thank you,
also
Laura.
we have, sure. We also have Jake Ansbach with us. He is the head of our development team at Brightwave. So he leads, this team of expert email developers with Brightwave and does great work. He also leads the charge with Brightwave Labs, which is a really kind of experimental place where we're doing a lot of proof of concept work about what is possible in the inbox. In addition, he is quarantined with an adorable pug named Sage. So that's pretty cool. Welcome, Jake.
Thank you.
And I'm going to kind of guide you through this conversation. Laura Sullivan, Vice President and Creative Director at Brightwave, spend a lot of time thinking about email content and email design and just what's possible in the inbox. So just wanted to tell you a little bit about Brightwave before we get started. We are one of the oldest, most decorated email marketing agencies. Been around for 17 years. We were founded, in Atlanta. In 2019, we were acquired by an awesome company called Ansira that has a broader marketing and technology capability and an incredible client list with really a wide variety of capabilities. So now we're a part of that family. It's important because they have a very important Adobe partnership, which really makes today's conversation even more exciting. So we're really excited to be a part of the Ansira family. We've been called the best of the best and the leading independent email agency by the Relevancy Group, which took an independent look at email agencies. And we also scored #1 for client satisfaction and for platform expertise. We are technology agnostic, so we have expertise in Adobe, of course, also in IBM, Oracle, Salesforce, and all the big marketing clouds. We're really, really proud of our people as well, who are all passionate email experts, and we receive really high reviews on Glassdoor, which is something that we're really proud of. 95% of people who work at Brightwave would recommend their experience to a friend. So we think that's a really good and healthy sign. We do lots of thought leadership as well. We have authored hundreds, probably thousands at this point, of articles, and we've done primary research and written the book on email marketing. But we also created a very unique conference called EIQ that we do every year that is really a gathering and a meeting of the minds to talk about innovation in email and really look forward to what's next in the inbox. And last but not least, we have a great client roster ourselves. Really proud of the work that we do for brands like Chick-fil-A, Goldman Sachs, Edible Arrangements, and many, many more. So we're going to show a little bit of our work throughout this presentation. I'm very excited to show it to you. So I believe now Michael is going to tell us a little bit about Adobe.
Thank you so much, Laura. And it's great to be with both you and Jake today in Brightwave. You have been a fantastic partner of Adobe and Adobe Campaign for several years. So thank you for having me and inviting me to do this webinar with you on the newest trends in email marketing. As you mentioned, I've been in the email marketing space for over a decade, so I'm part of that fan club of email, and it continues to evolve every year. Every year we see an article that says email is dead, and then every year we see new innovations in email pushing it forward continually. And so that means that all of you listening, all of us marketers, we're faced with constantly changing challenges, and some of them are very daunting. It's no secret that there's been an explosion of content channels and mediums for your customers to interact with you over the years, especially over the last 10 to 15 to 20 years. No matter the industry or the size of your organization, each marketer has to take into account the various ways to communicate with your customers as well as respond and listen to them. So that's no secret. Everyone knows that collectively, but we still struggle. I wanted to share a few statistics with you here. Just 4% of companies that were polled rated their ability to take in customer signals as exceptional. Just 4%. And that means that they actually listened for customer cues in real time. 2 and 5 were willing to describe their capabilities as fairly good, indicating they could listen for cues in some channels but struggled in others. But the bulk of respondents reported having trouble both taking in signals from customers and understanding what they meant. And less than 50% of marketers say that they can collaborate effectively across their organization to deliver orchestrated or coordinated customer experiences. And only 3% of US companies said that they have true omni-channel personalization, according to a March 2019 survey, so about a year ago. Just 26% said they had at least half of their marketing channels connected. At the other end of the spectrum, 21% didn't have any of their marketing channels connected. So before it was an industry segment, this idea around multi-channel orchestrated campaign management, Adobe Campaign was solving these challenges around campaign orchestration, and especially breaking down the barriers in these latter two topics of orchestration amongst your team members and coordinating across channels. So what is Adobe Campaign? Adobe Campaign is a powerful solution for the modern marketer, bringing together all of the aspects to multi-channel campaign orchestration. It's built on a solid foundation for data handling and managing with powerful segmentation and targeting tools to ensure one-to-one marketing. At Adobe Campaign, our platform leverages the power of content, whether that be from Adobe Creative Cloud like Photoshop or Dreamweaver, all the way to Adobe Experience Manager on the digital experience side, or your own generated content that you've created or an agency has created for you. And it allows you to marry your creative with your data insights. And then from there, you can create rich workflows targeting segments and individuals on their preferred channel, both online and offline. So from email marketing to push notifications and in-app messaging, SMS and social, but even traditional channels like direct marketing and direct mail, and even POS systems like receipts. And even some of our customers use custom channels like in-car dashboard systems. By using one platform, Adobe Campaign supports the efforts by organizations to break down silos and drive truly coordinated and orchestrated customer experiences. So our customers are truly orchestrating these campaigns across different channels, and it's helping them to be where their customers are at.
Awesome. Thank you for that, that background and that research. Really, really important snapshot of where we're at. So today we're going to tackle a little grab bag of topics. And, these are kind of topics that we hear a lot of buzz about from our clients and customers, and also just in general in the email agency or in the email world. We're going to spend most of our time talking about dark mode and what it means for your email program right now, but also wanted to tackle some other topics that we think are worthy of your attention. So we're going to talk a little bit about Google AMP and some recent examples of Google AMP, and how you should really be thinking about it. We're going to talk a little bit about deliverability in our sort of world that we're living in now, post-COVID-19, and some new thinking about deliverability. And then we're going to just briefly touch on BIMI or brand indicators in the inbox that can help build a lot of customer trust. That's very important right now. So I think, it's important. I think everything right now feels like it's about the pandemic. But we wanted to bring you something a little bit different. And I think for a lot of people, they're, using email and using the email channel to work really hard to communicate with their customers. And they may have a lot of emergency communications, a lot going on with their business, and they're using email as an outlet and maybe running around, feeling like, there's an emergency email every moment, and that's good. But there's also another group that we've noticed that you've got a little bit of extra time on your hands, perhaps, and you may have a little bit of downtime, and this could be the time to make some investments in your email program. Just spend that time kind of investigating some of these topics and spending the time to optimize your program in a different way. So we wanted to bring you, a few topics that we think are actually worthy of your attention right now. So first, we're going to talk about dark mode. I think the first question that everyone asks themselves when thinking about dark mode is, well, why should I care about this? There's a variety of reasons why that we'll kind of dive into. But the main takeaway is that, since iOS enabled dark mode, a year ago or more, that was the first kind of domino to fall. Now we're seeing more and more support for dark mode in different places. So really, whether you like it or not, your emails are going to be viewed in a darker environment. And, this is a long list here of all the email clients that are now supporting a dark interface. So, whether you like it or not, dark mode is here, and we need to be paying attention to it. Is there anything to add there from the panelists about why people should care?
Yeah, the adoption rate has increased. And an informal polls show over 60% of people are adopting it. I mean, this could be because it has less eye strain on the user. Brightness levels can also save battery life. It can increase legibility for some people. So, I mean, a lot, and my preferred experience is the dark interface. So, the adoption is high. It's affecting email. So it's something to definitely consider how it affects your campaigns, whether that's legibility or just your brand getting lost.
Absolutely, for sure. And I think, this is a kind of a framework for thinking about, how much you should optimize or care about dark mode. But I think this is a really smart way to kind of calculate the value to your brand, Michael. I don't know if you wanted to speak to this framework for thinking about it.
Right, Laura. Whenever there's a new innovation, especially with email marketing, we have to level set. And everyone often wants to jump on the bandwagon and try new things. And we love that. We saw it when we started doing animated GIFs or video and email using emojis in the subject line. What we want to avoid is just checking off boxes. Right? So we want to have intention to using any new innovation. So I always like to start with a little research around these new features or capabilities. So for dark mode, we really have to consider your audience. What is your organization? What is your industry? Who's your audience? Who's the typical persona? We were talking earlier this week, preparing for this webinar. If your audience is highly technical or filled with developers who are used to using a dark mode because they spend their day coding computer software, then they're likely to have dark mode on their phones. And so that's going to be something that's very important for you to take into consideration. But if you have a completely different audience who's not very savvy, who doesn't even know dark mode exists, it might not be worth the investment. So it does help to do a little research. So we're going to talk in a little bit. Jake is going to help us understand the 3 different ways of how emails render when dark mode is on, depending on how you develop or if you develop anything for dark mode. But we want to think creatively to dive in and see who in our audience is using dark mode. And while there's not one single way of getting to that insight just yet, we were brainstorming ways to do this. You might create a pixel or put something in a pixel to that gets picked up so that you know who's seeing things in dark mode. You might put a little Easter egg or a little hidden treasure in your email, so that maybe a link or something that only renders if somebody is using dark mode in one of the ways that it renders, and that way you're going to see it in tracking. And this will start to give you a little insight into how much of your audience is using dark mode. If you want to be more overt about it and upfront, let's start adding this in our preference center or subscription centers or during our opt-in process, or just do a survey. Put a quick survey in some of your campaigns or in your welcome email, and just ask if people are using dark mode. This is going to really help you with that measurement of ROI versus investment, right? So whenever we have a new capability, it's going to take time to understand it, to learn how to code or learn how to implement it. And you're going to have to make that justification oftentimes internally to managers or directors. And then what's the payoff? If there's not much of a payoff, then that's going to influence our decision and how much time we spend on doing this. I suspect, though, with that informal polling that Jake and Laura referred to, the trend is moving up, and we're going to probably see more participation in dark mode. So we're going to want to do something, and having this background and foundational research on our audiences is really going to help us know where and when to make that investment.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense. I really want someone in the email community to develop that pixel. That would be very useful. Yeah, those are great points and great ways of thinking about just how much you need to consider dark mode and how much you need to be optimizing. So I think that's a good transition to kind of the next question on people's minds. I know there's a sense that, oh, this is just happening to me, and people are viewing my emails in this environment. I don't know how many, and that kind of lack of control. But what can you do to optimize your emails for dark mode so that they look good no matter what environment they're being viewed in? And I think the good news is that there are a lot of different emails, and tried to pull together just 5 ways that you can start to optimize your emails for a dark mode environment right now and kind of take back that control. So one of the big things that you'll see if you just flip your dark mode viewing on and just start flipping through your inbox is images. So any kind of outlined image should be a transparent PNG so that you don't get those white boxes. So you can see in this example on the left-hand side, these icons or infographic elements are outlined in white. And that is one of the big things that immediately will jump out at you when you start looking at your emails in dark mode. Another thing related to that is logos. So you'll often see this kind of white box around a logo. And, even at Brightwave for our internal emails, we notice this. We're like, oh no, we have to make sure that our logo is actually a transparent PNG. But a step further than that, if you have a dark logo, doing something to ensure that it will be seen, for example, outlining it in a little bit of white so that when dark mode is on, it doesn't just disappear. So you can see this example on the left-hand side. There's actually a darker logo here that's just kind of disappearing, and you're not able to see it. Or some of these smaller links down at the bottom are disappearing because they're in this darker color. So yeah, that's always something to consider. And related to that as well, just considering the contrast. So if you're thinking about the inverted colors that come along with dark mode, thinking about your text and the contrast is super important. So you can see in this example as well, the charcoal sort of numbers get lost when the text is inverted. So that can be very tricky. And one way to figure out for all of these things is to just really pay attention to the dark mode rendering in whatever testing tool that you use. So great news is that Litmus, 250OK, Email on Acid, all of our favorite rendering tools do show you what your emails look like in dark mode right now. So you can really pay close attention to contrast and type and imagery. And last but not least, I think the theme that we saw when really digging into dark mode rendering for a lot of different emails is that if you have a really strong design system that incorporates all of those email best practices, it's going to help you out in this case too. So if you have, some great live text in your email designs, that's going to pay off, and you're going to have less awkward white boxes. Anything else that you guys would add to just, the first toe in the water of optimizing for dark mode?
Those are all valid points. I would like to also call out just on that contrast step there. That's very important because in email, it's very popular to use background images. And it's important to note that background images don't typically get inverted on these UI dark mode supported environments. So if you have a light background image and your text gets inverted because it assumes that this is a dark mode email, it's going to invert your background color of the total email to white, and then your text to black, or vice versa. It can make it really hard to read, and you'll lose your message completely. And I think that's the important thing to note, and why we need to consider dark mode is that accessibility. You want people to see your message, and if you're not prepared for how these email clients are inverting or changing your email, it could just, you'll lose the message altogether, and your audience won't see it, and it'll be a terrible experience, and you'll lose your CTA, and that could be detrimental to that campaign. So I think it's just important that this is happening to your emails.
Got it. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. Great points. It feels a little bit like there's this lack of control. Like, I don't know how my emails are being viewed in all these different environments. But there may be some other ways that you can actually control how the emails are viewed. And I mentioned earlier that Jake works a lot with Brightwave Labs, where we're just kind of experimenting. And so I think there's some other ways that we've experimented with that you can kind of take back that control. So you want to tell us about those, Jake?
Yeah, so previously we were talking about how to optimize your email for dark mode UIs. And so that's explicitly, there's a lot of email clients that invert the colors themselves without you having the control. Apple is leading the charge with creating a media query that, hopefully it's standardized and everyone comes to support it, but knowing email and might not be the case. But this allows us to actually target those who have the preference and then change the color scheme based on what we decide. So if we think we need to swap out a logo to a lighter version of logo versus just outlining a logo, we can do that. If we need to switch your CTA contrast, we can do that. And you notice here, all the logos swap out to a colored versus a white version. So having that media query support brings the control to your developer, and you get to really decide what the experience is, which I think is very valuable, and it'll make for a better experience than just letting the email client decide how it's going to invert the colors of the email.
Totally, absolutely. And we tested out this type of dark mode detection in this webinar email that we sent out. So you may have seen it, if you had dark mode off, you got this version on the left. If you had dark mode enabled and that media query was supported, you got this version on the right. Then of course there was also just a fallback version if that query wasn't supported. So pretty cool way to take back the control. So another way that we have been experimenting, I know, with kind of taking back that control is letting the user have the control. So we've created this kind of reader mode innovation as well. Jake, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, like you said, this is kind of the opposite. Now we're giving the user to decide its preference in the inbox itself. So here it's a reader mode. It's a lot like the iOS browser reader mode when you get to control how a website can look on your phone. So what this really does is it kind of makes content first. And so you can, when you enable reader mode, it can strip out any of the designy pieces and just really highlight the text. It allows the user to increase font size, sans serif versus serif, and then the background color. So if you prefer reading on a dark background, like we said, it has less eye strain. It allows the user to decide that. So I think that's really cool, and it's a fun experience if you get that in your inbox.
Absolutely. And this seems like a great solution for that really content heavy type of email, like a blog email or a newsletter, things like that, where, as you said, the content really comes first.
Absolutely.
Great. These are really cool innovations that we are definitely looking forward to putting out there and using for our clients and just getting into the inbox. So kind of the last question along these lines is, we see how dark mode can be a thorn in the side for a lot of brands, but are there any brands out there that are really doing dark mode well? So we wanted to pull out a few of those examples and just kind of show off brands that are doing a really good job. So this email on the right-hand side, Synovus is a banking client of ours. Luckily, they have great brand assets and brand colors that work really well in dark mode or non-dark mode. And so I think you can see this email really pops out, the imagery pops out, the headline pops out in dark mode. And you can see the kind of circle around the icon at the bottom looks really good with dark mode on and really stands out. And it's still, just a great experience. And in this middle example here with Chris Steakhouse, again, their brand works really well with dark mode, and everything is optimized really beautifully, including the imagery, the buttons, things like that. I really like the bottom kind of gallery view with the different thumbnails. You could easily see how that might go wrong with dark mode on, but this email is really well done, and it looks great in dark mode. And last but not least, on the left-hand side, this is an Airbnb host email that was in my inbox, and I think it just looks great with dark mode. You have a lot of live text here that, when it's inverted, just looks great. And the icons at the bottom obviously are PNGs. You don't have that big ugly box around them. Just a lot of things about this email that are going really well with dark mode on.
Yeah, it's important to note too in those slides. So these emails here, this might not be the initial intent of these emails, but like we talked about, they had a good design system that really works well when it hits a dark mode environment. I'm sure Ruth's Chris, the celebration worth savoring. I'm sure that's not the red that they would have chose, but it just, they're not losing their content. Their logos aren't getting lost. It's just really taking those best practices that we stated, and it lends itself to being a good experience in dark mode.
And I think it's a good example where if you start testing or start looking at the rendering tests in the different email clients, you're going to get a sense of where to start. And I love the example of earlier, your logo, your brand logo and logo image is the first thing usually at the top. And what a missed opportunity if it's not visible because it doesn't render or can convert correctly, or if there's this giant white space around it because it's not a transparent image. So, start, like we've been saying, start simple, start with the basics and go from there. But what we want to do and want to help you do is protect that brand reputation.
Absolutely. That's a great point. Your logo is sacred. So definitely need to be paying attention to that. Well, this is a really rich conversation about dark mode. I'm really excited to see how the email community kind of, continues to optimize for dark mode as more and more clients are going to be supporting that environment. As I mentioned, we wanted to talk about other ways to invest in your program too. You know, when people have this moment of downtime, it can be a time for them to think about, wow, all these different trends that have been on your laundry list of, I need to be paying attention to this, but I don't really know what it is. And we just pulled out a few things that we think are worthy of your time and attention that we wanted to talk through. So first up, Google AMP. We hear a lot about Google AMP, and you know, it feels like for years now we've been excited about it, wanting to try it, not knowing, you know, exactly how we should be investing in Google AMP. So I wanted to kind of talk through really what are the benefits of this technology.
So if you don't know what AMP is, if you've been in a cave, AMP allows the email developer to create experiences and web activities that can be fully completed inside the email without leaving the email. It's something we've talked about as email marketers for years. Wouldn't it be nice to complete an activity without having to leave? So at first it seems like semantics. Well, what does it matter if I stay inside an email or take me to a landing page or take me back to the website? This has the potential, when done right, to dramatically increase engagement, especially for certain audiences or certain targeted behaviors. We've used visual cues to tease the next action for years in email. Now think about showing a rating scale to encourage you know, a product review or an experience review. And I feel like I'm voting on a 1 to 5 scale right there in the email, but when I actually click, it takes me off to a landing page and I have to go and finish that survey. And for some people who are less patient than others, it's just another step. And we see drop-off rates. And I suppose that those drop-off rates are correlated to other activities as well, not just with reviews. So AMP continues the movement to make email even more interactive and personalized, and it can leverage and work with existing technologies like dynamic content or real-time offers, content that's updated in real time. So email, as we know, it's always been the digital marketing workhorse. It drives more engagement and more revenue than any other online channel. And now we have another tool in our toolbox. And many of us email marketers have had to fight for attribution internally, right? No, it's the email that caused that spike in sales. Well, with AMP for email, you're going to be able to prove the attribution even more closely by completing those actions inside the email. So before we take a look at some specific examples, Jake, maybe you can tell us some use cases for AMP.
So like you stated, AMP allows us to bring everything into the inbox and complete a transaction, let's say, without leaving. So this would be great for abandoned cart emails. Like if you have something in your cart, you can potentially, you know, check out that abandoned item right in the inbox, or, you know, check into a flight, update an appointment. That could be a doctor's appointment, hair appointment, so forth. Or I think a really big one, and a lot of marketers like, is progressive profiling. You know, like we previously stated, do you like dark mode experience or do you not? So you can really just have a click, and it doesn't lead them anywhere. It still makes the campaign CTA the priority when you leave the inbox.
Absolutely. And there are a few examples here that were some of the kind of early experimental examples of what you could do with AMP. So, you know, probably people watching this may have seen these before, because these were some of the first examples that got us excited. But doing things like completing a pin on Pinterest directly from your inbox and actually choosing the board. Things like real-time flight deals and information, where you can actually purchase a deal. You can see more similar deals like it right in the inbox. So those are a few just additional use cases. And I think Michael has some pretty great customer examples now that Adobe Campaign Classic does support AMP as well.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. We've had a couple of early adopters in our customer base doing some experimentation with AMP for email. Bose here is one of our examples. A great global company providing entertainment equipment and headphones and microphones and so forth. One of their goals was to capture more customer-based stories. And they use these stories in their promotions and just in their engagement activities. So in the email, they started off with a carousel with a couple of different customer profiles and stories. So we see Eric here with his quote, and you can scroll through this carousel. And when you get to the end of the carousel, you have the opportunity to share your story with Bose about how you're using their products or what they've done to help you achieve a goal that you might have. And as you can see on the right, you can just drop your name and email and your brief story, your quote right there, and submit it all from within the email. So this was something that they've been wanting to do. They've been collecting stories and wanted to see if they could get higher engagement through using AMP, and they had some really good early results from this. Another example is from Indigo, which is a major airline in India. And similar to what Jake and Laura showed just earlier, they wanted to test showing offers right inside of the email for flights. The really cool part of what Indigo did was they took it a step farther. So obviously they used dynamic content to show flights that were relevant to their subscribers, but they could update those with the latest price and the latest availability in real time using, again, dynamic content and real time offers. So no matter when you opened that email or maybe went back the next day, the content was being updated based on real-time data, and you could complete those activities right from inside the email. So they're very excited about this as well. It's just another way, again, of reaching out to their subscribers and increasing the convenience factor.
Absolutely. These high value emails are the ones that we want to tackle first with things like AMP, and really, invest the time with them. So that's really cool, really interesting to hear. One more example, client example that we pulled out, and this is more of a proof of concept of how we would like to be using AMP, but this is kind of an abandoned browse type of situation where someone went into the catering portion of the site and they started to plan a catering meal, and then they may have bounced for whatever reason. So in this example, we're really bringing that catering experience from the web just right into the inbox to reduce the friction, as Michael was kind of alluding to earlier. So this is kind of that app or web-like experience for ordering catering where you're telling us what time of day are you ordering, how big is your party, some other key information, and then without leaving the inbox, we're able to actually recommend a catering menu for you, and then even take you through the checkout process to get you going on your way. So, reducing the friction and really bringing the web experience into the inbox to kind of shift the customer behavior. So that's the latest thoughts on Google AMP. Again, really excited to see what's going to happen in the email community with AMP and how we're going to start adopting. Some other things to consider, especially during this time. I mentioned earlier that I feel like everything's about COVID-19, but we're going to talk about something different for a few minutes, which is very refreshing and nice. But can't help but getting back to that topic. And there was some really good thought leadership on the Adobe blog recently about deliverability and COVID-19 and just customer trust and how we need to be thinking about deliverability now as much as we've ever been. So Michael, I don't know if you want to kind of walk us through that thinking a little bit.
Yeah, our deliverability team here at Adobe Campaign really shared some of the questions coming in quickly. They had a great blog post on March 31st. So everything happened really quickly with everything changing over the last several weeks and the last month or so. And questions around deliverability were kind of flooding the team. And they were quick. Our team was quick to respond and get some best practices out there because, with, like you said, with these features and capabilities, some other parts of email marketing don't go away, like deliverability and send reputation. So I wanted to pull out like some of the three main key pieces to remember here as you're testing and changing strategies. For some organizations, they might think about pulling back their sends or changing their promotions and really responding to the changing times. But we have to be careful. So Gmail and Yahoo and some of the larger ESPs are looking for and look at and keep track of your daily volume or your weekly volume. And if they see significant decreases or increases from that volume, it's going to trigger some of their filters or some of their algorithms to see what's going on. So we don't want to go over our maximum volume or our average volume by 20%, but we don't want to just stop sending either. There could be very relevant strategies or reasons to stop some campaigns or put a hold on some campaigns, but this is your opportunity to think of new content to still engage your audience. Again, it just depends on what your organization serves up and offers. There's two other things to be aware of around sending permanence, right? It's a similar theme here about maintaining that send volume over time. And then subscriber fatigue and engagement. We've had a little internal contest going on to see who can find all of the different COVID-19 specific communications in their inboxes. Some have been really great. Others have been a little awkward. Don't just check the box. Laura, I hear you laughing. You might have a good one to share.
Oh, well, I don't know if you saw recently, there was a poem that went around that was all the first line of all of the emails in someone's inbox. They were all of course, COVID-19 related. It was very funny.
Absolutely.
In these trying times. ...
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for some organizations, it's very relevant, and you absolutely have a reason to talk about your response. For others, it might be a stretch. So just take that into consideration. But you also have the opportunity to be really unique and creative, and but still serious. But if you're an organization that just doesn't have to have a COVID-19 response, that really is your opportunity to get creative and see how you can help people who are still staying at home. So the last piece is just keep an eye on your tracking and on your reporting. Look at those opens and clicks, look at the spam complaints, see if there's anything that's sticking out that's unique. And that's when you should be engaging with your deliverability consultants, whatever ESP you're using, whether it's Adobe or one of the others, or if you're using a company like Validity or 250OK or ReturnPath. This is the time to really protect your reputation, because we will come out of it and you'll get back on track, and you won't want to have to spend time fixing your reputation.
Absolutely. Those are good things to always keep in mind, especially now, though. We have just one last kind of topic open for discussion here. And also, I think it's a sign of the times and a good opportunity for right now. But this is two examples here from my inbox and from Michael's inbox, unfortunately, that show brand indicators, or BEMI. And this is just a brand logo or some other imagery that denotes your brand that will display right in the inbox. And the reason why I say it's so timely right now is because of this huge influx of emails that everyone is getting. There also is a decrease, just kind of trust of emails. And so this is a way to help you stand out, to help you gain that trust and that instant brand recognition in the inbox. And it really is just a huge missed opportunity if you're not doing this and all of your competitors are. So you can see on the right-hand side, this is just what's going to display next to your brand, pretty generic, versus your brand logo, which is so important.
Yeah, when we were preparing for this, I just happened to flip to my promotions tab in Gmail. You can see it from the other day. I've been in email for about 12 years, so I have a ridiculous promotions tab. And there's a mix of even some of our Adobe customers who are listed there who haven't activated or implemented BIMI. And to me, it's an easy it's an easy step. Take the time. It's a one-time setup, and do it, and really, honor your brand reputation. It might seem small, but especially, we were just talking about COVID-19, especially in these times when spammers are increasing, phishing attacks are increasing. This easy way to increase that trust. We were talking about a great example of a lot of the banks, a lot of financial institutions are reaching out to their customers, educating them on mobile banking or online banking, helping them achieve their banking needs without going into the bank, especially for some demographic segments. So, build up that trust and confidence, not only with educating them with content, but just with the logo, so that everyone knows that this email is truly coming from your brand.
Absolutely. Just do it. Just do it. Great. Well, this has been a great conversation. I appreciate everyone's input. Just to wrap it up, 4 things to think about here. And, one thing we know for sure is that your emails are being viewed in a dark mode environment. So maybe start to optimize for it. Consider investing in Google AMP for some of those really high value experiences. Deliverability is important now, as it always has been, but even more so in our stay-at-home world. And then just do it. Use Bemi to increase brand trust in the inbox. So four great takeaways or ideas for investing in your email program right now. I appreciate everyone's time and input, and thank you for listening in and joining us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jake, and thank you, Laura, and thank you for being great partners of Adobe.